My friends were the capes that my mother had made. They scream with Batman and Robin as they begin their crusade. And then there is me with my worried face. Be careful, I say, this is a dangerous place. Yep, it's little old me stuck playing the old butler guy. No swinging from ropes, no soaring on high. I get to be Alfred screaming, watch out below, while they play heroes. It's like watching the show. They climb up the trees, so brave and so bold, while I'm stuck in the sandbox feeling ever so old. But it's really alright, they've got nothing to fear, 'cause I'll be the best darn Alfred I can. Yep, the best darn Alfred I can. The hours pass by, and it all seems quite fun. My friends fighting villains, crushing them one by one. But there's no cape for me, no cool mask to wear. Still they tell me I'm helping as they soar through the air. They climb up the trees, so brave and so bold, while I'm stuck in the sandbox, feel ever so old. But it's really alright, they've got nothing to fear, 'cause I'll be the best darn Alfred I can. Yep, the best darn Alfred I can. And I'm just as brave in a different way, keeping them safe, come what may. And they climb up the trees, so brave and so bold, while I'm stuck in the sandbox feeling ever so old. But it's really alright, they've got nothing to fear, 'cause I'll be the best darn Alfred I can. Yep, the best darn Alfred I can.
The Live Stream Code and Rating Administration has rated this online event PG. All ages admitted. Please be kind and stay on topic.
Four pals just hanging out, nostalgia in the air. Classic shows to celebrate with laughter we all share. We call it a retro palooza. It's an hour or two of fun. We're nerding out together and we could probably use some sun. Oh, we're the retro pals, living in the past, broadcasting memories that forever last. Retro palooza, where the old scenes play, laugh until the night turns into day.
Good evening and welcome to the Good Stuff Live. My name is Dave Sundstrom, and you have stumbled upon another episode of what we lovingly, adoringly call Retropalooza. This is Retropalooza number 9, which means I have special guests with me this evening, and I'm going to bring them on screen in just a moment in order of arrival. But first, let's see who's out here in the chat real quick. Early this morning, Uncle Paul from Uncle Paul's Beatles Playhouse popped in to ask the question, Dave? I don't know if he's still here, but hey, Uncle Paul, good to have you popping on by. Channel member Lance Chaffin says, Dave, you have not posted on YouTube yet. Okay. I have been posting frequently, Lance. Sorry you've been missing them. Danny Staten's here. I think the fat comic book guy might be Danny Staten as well. Sarah My Flock is everywhere. Channel member Sarah My Flock is everywhere is here hanging out with us. Kenneth Wilkinson. Let's see who else is here. Gary Carpenter. John Orchard. Now I think John is going to actually be watching this over on Thrash's channel from what I understand. So good to have you with us, John. Who else is here? Channel member Tracy Rothmeyers, welcome. Eric, the Unapologetic Geek, welcome. Eric, good to have you here. Rachel in the 208, welcome. Always a treat to have you hanging out with us. Cindy D is here as well. Let's see who else is in the chat. Mr. Led. It's great having you hanging out with us tonight. Let's see. Anyone else? Adrian James is here. Raja 1938. Aristia Brat 311. Oh, Uncle Paul says email me. It's in the description of the channel. Will do. Karen Lester. Welcome, welcome, Karen. Always fun to see familiar names in the chat, right? People that have been to live streams before and just, are active members of the community. Melina Long is here. Melina says, which 80 stars dropped out in San Jacinto Community College? A, these are questions. Patrick Swayze, B, Tom Cruise, C, Rob Lowe, or D, Judd Nelson? The answer is A, Patrick Swayze. R.I.P. Just Gail's with us. Welcome, Gail. Divining Dragon, blessings to you as well. Thank you for your kind words. And Snark and Sass, who I have watched on many of Sarah's live streams. So good to have you with us here as well. And I think I'm all caught up with the chat, which means it's time to bring the Retro Pals onto the screen. I think the first to arrive this evening was my friend, Thresh Pondo Pons. How are you?
Never better, Dave. How are you? And how about all you guys in the chat? Oh, and of course, Superman. I'm going to try to do this without my glasses tonight because I won't be reading the chats as much. So this way I have a more expressive mug.
You know what, though? The IQ goes up like 20 points once you throw the glasses on, Bob.
In my case, it goes down. I'll flip-flop and see which one works best for me.
Whatever works. All right. Next to arrive was the one and only Barry King. Welcome, Barry.
Hello, everybody. Hey, Dave. Hey, Thrash. Hey, everybody in the chat. And hey, Pat, I know you're coming up here in just a minute.
Speaking of Pat McCormick, there he is. Welcome, Mr. McCormick.
Hi, guys. So I'm a little late. This
I think you were right on time, right?
Well,
you were just the last to arrive, but you were right on time.
Well, you know me, Dave. I like to be early. I like to do tech checks and all that fun stuff. And of course, the one time that I don't do that,
well,
the mic doesn't work.
You still sound okay.
Good.
What?
Yeah, this is the camera mic.
He sounds as good as he ever does. So I mean, that's about all we can expect, right?
Well, I think I've sounded better on your show, as a matter of fact. But
right, we can tell that it's a different microphone, but you're coming through loud and clear, so you're good.
All right.
And I could not be more sympathetic, as you guys all know.
It's just funny because I'm using it to record podcasts because I started doing podcasts again, and it works like a charm. Then for the important stuff like the Retro Palooza, and it's like, oh no, I'm afraid not. And for no logical reason either, because I went through the logical reasons. So sledgehammer time.
I'm kind of glad you didn't do a pre-check, because then we would be like stressing trying to get it to work.
Yeah.
Everything's fine.
Yeah, I took care of that myself.
Did I hear someone say that IQs went up when you put your glasses on? Is that what
absolutely.
All right.
But sexiness goes down, Barry. So.
Oh, then forget it.
Yeah.
Not in his case.
Oh dear.
This
the
is where we left off.
factor, yes.
Sexy Barry.
All right.
Barry,
Let's see. We've got a milestone
could you play Misty for me?
No.
Couldn't help it. All right, Dave. Have at it.
Yeah, I better get this out of the way. I need to make sure that I highlight the milestone messages for my channel members. John Collins, who's been a member for 39 months, says, you guys have a bar of hilarity to reach. Last time Dave drank Coke, would be Diet Coke, and Pat pantomimed having Coke as well. It was hilarious. So today it's a water bottle with a drink mix in it. So no Diet Coke for me.
Got something in here.
What are you partaking of there, my friend?
It's some blue liquid from Tatooine. I don't know what it is, but it's really good. So, in my universal horror cup here,
Oh, that's pretty classy, Barry. That's pretty classy. I like it. And Pat, what was that? What's going on there?
Yeah, just reliving some old times, Barry. I mean, not Barry, Dave. Sorry, you guys.
His gingivitis is kicking in.
Yes.
My canines are sharp.
I was a rocker. I was on those buses, the debauchery, and it was the 80s. So
perfect.
Say it snowed.
Hey, that was pretty cool. Speaking of you being a rocker, that thing you posted to Facebook, the audio of you with Montrose.
Yes, that was
very cool.
Recently discovered by a fan. I don't know how he did it, but it came up in the Netherlands of all places.
Wow.
And 31 years ago, the last show I ever played with him. So it's had so much meaning to it. It was sentimental.
Yeah.
When I heard it, I was like, especially the piece that I put up.
It's great
because he was such a legend, and it was tragic how he died, and so we basically I'm trying to put it together as a tribute. And I just yesterday heard from a high-end professional audio engineer who's going to take it under his wing and see what he can do with it, because it's just a board mix. It's not actually we didn't know we were doing it.
Right.
Matter of fact, Ronnie knew we were doing it. He would have said, "Don't do it." So in that way, it's like it dodged a bullet, and then went and lived in the Netherlands for 31 years. And it's like, and there it is. And I don't even have a recording of me with Ronnie. I mean, I have one live thing where he sat in with my band, but this is the serious thing that we did for a number of years, and really proud of it. So more to come.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. So how did you find out? Did someone reach out to you and say, hey, I've got this?
Yeah, you earn fans, and mutual fans of Ronnie and Gamma and mine. Somehow they all just kind of pull together and go on searches. And of all places, it's like, hey, Pat, somebody's sending me a recording of your live show in San Diego in 1993. And he's in the Netherlands. I don't know what it's going to sound like, but I'll just send you a copy when I get it. And when I put it in, I was shocked how good it did sound. Very quiet. So it needs work. But the piece that I posted is a perfect example of him and I, and how well we could work together. And man, what an honor.
Yeah.
Such an honor.
Very cool. Lance Chaffin pops in with his milestone message. He says, thank you, Dave, and hi, guest. Lance has been a channel member for 29 months. Thank you for all your support, Lance. And Eric, I thought you must have dropped off the channel member ranks there for a little bit, but welcome back, Eric, and thank you so much for all your support. Truly appreciated. To all the channel members, the great thing about channel members is they don't have to do it, but they do anyway. Yeah. I make all my videos available to everyone anyway, but the channel members, it's special. Appreciate you all. I love the community, but the channel members, there's something special for going out of their ways to support the channel. Truly appreciated. Oh, there he is. It says fixed it. Nicely done, Eric.
I'd like to everybody say hi to Mrs. Thrash. She's not on camera, but she just snuck out. She actually got me a generic bottle of water.
Nice.
Hi, Mrs. Thrash.
Yes,
hi.
Thrash. Welcome.
So good to have like that.
It's so funny. Little anecdote. They banned single bottle water in my town, so we have to drive over to the next town to get these like bulk packs of water now. And so take that, society. I'm a water smuggler.
You've always been a bit of a rebel. You've always
Without
been
a
a bit of a
cause.
rebel, Thrash.
I'll bring you a whole truckload with a black Trans Am up there with my buddy in my tractor trailer if you want me to.
Hey, and send some to LA while you're at it, please.
Okay, I will.
Eastbound and down.
You
Westbound.
guys can use all the water you can
Westbound,
get right
sorry.
now, Pat.
Yeah, I'm like I tell everybody, I'm fortunate because I'm 300 miles north of LA, so
Yeah.
we don't really get it. And I sent you guys that picture of the sunrise, that 300-mile away sunrise, and you could see the smoke ring around it.
Yeah, wow.
Wow.
Never saw it again. It was that
is
day
crazy.
right after the big fire, so it was a once in a lifetime thing. But what a mess.
Yeah.
They're hurting.
And the photos you sent of your friend who's been hooking you up with podcast guests.
Yeah, Harlan Bowl lost
That's
his
just
home.
tragic, those photos.
Well, and I spoke to him that morning, and it was like,
Yeah.
okay, Pat, how about Stephanie Powers? And I'm like, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to reach out to her. I'll talk to you later. Next thing I know, I hear from Hank Garrett, who we stay in touch. And he calls me up just to accost me. He's like, and you heard about Harlan, right? So that was the next day. And next thing I know, he's on ABC, their news channel down there, talking about his house. And yeah, it's been bad for the celebrities because it's a lot of those areas that got hit, especially, the Pacific Palisades. Yeah, it's awful. But that's not what the Retropalooza is for. So I was going to say, we should maybe touch on that. But,
No.
well, we already did.
We did.
Let's move on to the fun stuff.
It's fair to commiserate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did see, speaking of newscasts, though, real quick, I did see, and I think I told you guys in text, I saw some guy interviewing Steve Guttenberg, had no clue who Steve was.
Saw
He
that.
just was interviewing the newscaster was interviewing a random guy up there, and it happened to be Steve Guttenberg, who was helping some friends out with, I don't know if they were evacuating or what, but kind of cool to see him up there.
They were
giving,
moving cars.
doing what he could.
He was, yeah, exactly, Trash.
Is that what
So
it
he
was?
didn't know who Steve was at all?
Go, yeah.
Well, the guy goes, so you're some sort of actor, right? And he goes,
Well,
and
yeah,
Steve's like, yes,
So
I'm
that-
an
so
actor.
that
But people
reporter-
got
He was
can't
out of
leave their cars in
context.
the road.
So that
Gotta
reporter
move your
would probably
cars.
he'd be lost tonight with us in the 80s for sure.
They
Then,
sure
yeah.
would. But
Oh, yeah, for
speaking
sure.
of
I guess-
nuggets, so Steve Guttenberg is moving cars for the fire trucks and whatnot. In his big breakthrough film, Police Academy, the first one, he joins the academy after he loses his job as the Are You Sitting Down, a professional car parker.
That's true.
Whoa. Hey, his Instagram channel is amazing. He does live,
Yeah.
like 2-minute feeds of just kind of walking around and sharing really motivational stuff. And so that he's
Mhm.
proving to everybody he's a really, really good guy. And I
He
follow
is.
him.
And
That's
Zach
awesome.
Zach Galligan from Gremlins is a really nice guy too, and he's got a big presence. We talk about someone from the '80s, Billy from Gremlins. He's very responsive and receptive to fans on social media too.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Very cool. Emily Miller, did I mention Emily Miller has rejoined the ranks of channel members? And let's see, let's put this up on the screen. 32 months. So thanks for joining again, Emily, and thank you for your nearly 3 years worth of support.
Man.
And what else do we got?
Sean.
Yeah, we got Sean Innes, channel member Sean Innes, who has been here for supporting the channel for 25 months and been a member of the community even longer than that. So thanks to all you guys for your support. Truly appreciated. You're right, Pat. We've kind of gone down the path of talking about some dreary stuff. We should probably talk about some cool stuff. I think that we promised we were going to talk about 80s movies tonight, right? 80s movies, I think, was the topic. We all have a handful of movies that are our favorites. Let's go alphabetically. What do you say about going alphabetically? So we're going to crisscross. Yeah, we're going to crisscross. We're going to start with Barry, then I'll share one, and then Pat, you'll share one, and then Thrash will share one. Then we'll go out we'll go out to the crowd and see what they're saying, and then we'll share some more. So Barry, you're up. Which one do you want to talk about first?
Well, I know you said to send you 3, and I remember 2 of the 3, so you'll have to tell me what the third one is. I can't remember. I'll start with probably, I guess, my favorite movie of the 80s, and that's why I sent it to you. You can't get much more 80s than playing video games in the 80s. Boy, were they big in the 80s. And when you mix playing a video game that's connected to an alien planet, if you get the high score, you get coming whisked off to that planet with an alien and a little car, a little space car, taking off into the galaxy to take you away to help them fight evil. It's The Last Starfighter, and I talk about an 80s movie, video games, the clothes they wear, some of the pop songs that are in there mixed in with the soundtrack. You've got Lance Guest and Kathy Mary Stewart in there, folks from the 80s. He went on to be in Jaws: The Revenge. He was also in Halloween 2, the sequel to Halloween, worked at the hospital, and he's been in some other stuff. And Catherine Mary Stewart, what can you say about her? She's Night of the Comet. She was in a movie called The Apple, which was about one of the worst 80s movies I've ever saw, but it was still pretty entertaining. And she was in The Last Starfighter, and she's done a lot too. So she's on social media. Yeah,
she was at Nighthawks.
Yeah, and it's The Last Starfighter for me, guys, is one of those films where it's a mystery. I have no idea why this movie didn't do well when it came out. I loved it the first time I saw it, and I keep watching it. And it's since become a cult classic like Tron and Blade Runner and some of those other films that weren't hits when they came out. But The Last Starfighter is a fantastically entertaining movie. It was some of the earliest computer-generated effects that you saw on screen since Tron. And it was directed by Nick Castle, the guy to go on to work with that did work with John Carpenter. He played Michael. He played the Shape in Halloween when he put the sheet over his head. You couldn't see his face. But and he also directed Dennis the Menace, which I thought was a great movie with Walter Matthau.
Yeah, that was good.
But it was a funny movie. But yeah, The Last Starfighter for me, the Craig Safane soundtrack, such a heroic music, such a who doesn't want to be good at a video game and then come by get somebody pick you up and reward you for being good at it and take you off where you could probably get killed, behind the controls of a spacecraft. But what an 80s movie. I love that movie.
I love that there's a robot that stays behind in his place too. That just the whole story is so much fun. And also you meant now it's Robert Preston that's in that, right?
Yes, Robert as Centauri.
Yes, he's so good in this movie too. And I think I can't remember any roles after this one that he did on the big screen. So it's one of his last ones.
I know he was in Victoria for Blake Edwards, which was really funny too. But to me, everybody thinks of The Music Man with Robert Preston. I think of The Last Starfighter. I don't know why, but he was a great role.
Because he was great. Yeah, absolutely.
And did you guys know, a quick tidbit, the guys that worked on the effects for The Last Starfighter, did you know they did a demo reel for George Lucas and Star Wars? They animated 3 X-Wing fighters doing a loop like this, kind of like they look in The Last Starfighter. That's all they had. And the demo reel is on YouTube if you just look for it. And I recall something was said like, hey, that's cool. Keep working on it. You're not quite there yet, but we may be able to use that one day. And then, when Jurassic Park came along, I guess they did.
Yeah. That's very cool. Very cool. Wonderful movie. And to your point, it did not do well at the box office initially, but time has served it well. I think both from a video rental standpoint. And I mean, that was one that I can't remember how many times I rented out on VHS. And then HBO was one of those movies that seemed to be on HBO all the time too.
It was great.
Yeah.
I still love it.
Holds up. It holds up. Absolutely. My first one is going to be, let's go with one that is not universally beloved. And I don't know if it has definitely become well known over the decades. And it was even became a Broadway play. It's that well known, but certainly one could question the quality of the film as a whole. But one of the things that I love about some of these films in the 80s is feels like they just said, let's make a movie, script be damned, and just went ahead and, if you have a good actor and someone who they think is going to do well at the box office, that was certainly the case of Xanadu.
They still do that today too.
Yeah, they still do that today. This was Olivia's, I believe it was her follow-up to Grease. She had just done Grease, and Xanadu came out. I was so excited for this because it had Gene Kelly in it, who I loved. Even way back then, I loved in Singing in the Rain. I loved the Warriors, right? Michael Beck in it as well. I just thought this was going to be the greatest movie ever. And it turns out the movie, while it's beloved by me, even I will acknowledge that it's probably a 2.5, 2-star flick at best. But the soundtrack is phenomenal, particularly the ELO side. I really love Jeff Lynne's stuff, his contributions. And then I've got to say, as a lifelong diehard Tubes fan, to have the Tubes show up in this movie, even if they were performing something that they didn't write, it was still a lot of fun to see them on screen with Olivia Newton-John. So for all those reasons, this is one of those, it's just you watch the movie and Michael Beck's acting is horrible in this thing. Gene Kelly, I mean, I think this might have been one of his final film appearances too. They don't really seem to know exactly what to do with an actor of Gene Kelly's stature and his talents. There's a lot of things that even I, a huge fan of this movie, can critically point to and say, I still love it. I still love the soundtrack. And this is one of those movies. Do you have a movie where you've seen it so many times you can just fire it up and go do chores and just come in and catch a scene, and you just kind of have it on in the periphery, in the background? That's what this movie is for me. It's just in its absolute delight. Even it's a messy delight, but an absolute delight.
Well, Pat and I both are huge Jeff Lynne ELO fans. We talk about, sometimes I'll call Pat and we'll just talk about ELO sometimes and how great they are. And the guy went on to produce so many groups like the Beatles and Tom Petty. And I mean, the guy's a traveling Wilbury. He's a legend. And the ELO just, Mr. Blue Sky just got 1 billion downloads from Spotify. He just won an award from Spotify from Mr. Blue Sky being downloaded 1 billion times. So it's the soundtrack is fantastic.
You remember how I described it to you, Barry? My take of what ELO could do, which is something that very few bands, say for maybe Pink Floyd and a few other of the big bands, is they could literally create an environment with their music. So that it wasn't just like hearing a song and going, gosh, I like that song. You were literally taken somewhere. You were taken 100%. Away. And then you got this great song. And that is a level of talent of writing that is very rare. And that's why I love them too, An very environment.
True. Very true.
Agreed.
The funny thing about Xanadu is it was almost like it was trying to be the best of all possible worlds. I mean, that's the thing about the 80s. They were the most cutting edge decade, and yet they were the first truly nostalgic decade where everything was about the cool stuff of the past. And they were trying to do like a Busby musical and at the same time be forward thinking. So they latched on to something that really was cutting edge in 1980, roller skating, combined it with something that was going downhill, disco, and said, and we'll do it as a Gene Kelly musical. And what could possibly go wrong? Well, they found out.
Everything.
But the pieces were all there. You got to give it to them.
Yeah.
It must have looked great on paper. And then you had Don Bluth animation. And
Which is my favorite part of the film is the Don Bluth segment in the middle. That's my favorite part. It really is.
From what I understand, the movie was heavily edited. That it was like 2.5 hours long. It was what was that?
It was close to 3, actually.
Oh, was it close to 3? Okay,
close to 3.
And what you end up with is a movie that's well under 2 hours. They just chopped the heck out of it, particularly once I think the studio realized that whatever the finished product was going to be probably wasn't going to be a success. And much like Last Starfighter, it wasn't. It's certainly, the movie has lived on. These movies, regardless of box office success, some of them just live on anyway. And it was. I would love to see the 3-hour version, Bob. I'm probably one of 10, but I would love to see the 3-hour version of that movie.
But I'm sure all of you agree it belongs on a quintessential 80s movies list, no doubt.
It is definitely a quintessential 80s movie. There's even a line in it where Michael Beck says, "Come on, man, this is the 80s," which was, he says it like that was going to be the battle cry for the rest of the decade.
Pat, you're up.
Well, I love the 80s for the movies. I loved it for the rock and roll too. And one of my choices I want to talk to you guys about actually combines the two really well, but that's not the one I want to start with. I want to start with Excalibur, which to me was like a religious experience. Part of that was because it was one of the very first movies you could rent. And I could probably think back to what the other ones were, but we were the first kids on the block. I should say I was the first guy on the block, but my dad was kooky enough to buy a VHS, or it was a VCR, but it was 8 beta. And so you could go to the camera store, not the video store, right? That's where you'd buy the ridiculously expensive machine. And then you're like, well, maybe we ought to have some movies to play in it. And I did not see Excalibur in the theater, which was kind of that was a bummer, because, I saw it on a TV multiple times. And then I went to the theater because it was still playing. I don't know how they did that. God, I hope I got my timelines right, but who knows? Somebody correct me. Maybe I did see it in the theater, but I was too stoned to remember. Anyway, it was that kind of a movie, where you had no problem going in slightly going, all right, this is really cool. There's Merlin and wizards and whoa. The fact is, it's one of the most spectacular films ever shot. And it was nominated for an Oscar just because of the cinematography and the costumes. And so that, not to mention the big names that were in it.
Right.
And I gotta say, I come to learn that it was the precursor for Lord of the Rings. And that's a 3-hour movie. Guess what? So was this.
Yeah.
And I think if it was just under, and it was one of those movies where I felt like, gosh, you guys have had this feeling. I don't want this to end. I want it to keep going. I want to keep going. Come on, find the Holy Grail. You can do it. Come on, King Arthur. He's got to make it back to Guinevere and Lolly. And the fight scenes were incredible. I mean, all the filming aspect mixed with the humor. There was humor in there. It was just a wonderful movie, and it holds up to this day. First time I ever got a load of Patrick Stewart.
Yeah.
And it was like, wow, that guy's dynamic.
Liam Neeson.
Yeah, Liam Neeson. Let me see, who else do I have? Helen Mirren was in it. Gabriel Byrne, you're right. And so it was Nigel Torrey was the guy that played King Arthur. And I just thought he was brilliant. The fact is that he was 35 years old when he made the movie, but played King Arthur from a teenager all the way to an old man.
And we bought it.
Yes. Obviously it was such a pro setup that they were able to, do an Oscar-worthy job on every aspect of it. And of course, Roger Ebert was like, it's magnificent, a magnificently filmed absolute mess. It's like, okay, that's an Ebert. And as such, it kind of didn't get the traction it could have, or maybe it got just enough traction. I don't know. The Oscar nod is pretty cool, no matter what. So
easily on my top 5 of films of all time. It is.
Yeah,
love it.
All time.
Love it.
I rest my case.
John Borman.
I have
left instructions. At my funeral, at least one person has to say, "Are you just a dream, Bob?" And someone in absentia will have to say for me, "A dream to some, a nightmare to others."
Bob, you have to pop up and say that out of the box.
Yes,
I told them I will. If someone doesn't ask that, I will. So
you come out with the sword. Somebody's grabbed the sword out of a stone. We'll put it back. Put it back. That was one of the great scenes too. You need to put it back.
The same guy responsible for Deliverance and Zardoz was Sean Connery. John Boorman, what a director that guy was. He had a lot of weird movies, but a lot of great ones too. Great director.
Yeah, definitely a visionary.
Amazing. Oh, and by the way, Igraine was played by his daughter.
Yep.
And we all know the scene that we're all thinking right now.
And Mordred was played by his son.
Yeah.
Oh yes, very good. But Mordred didn't have any naughty scenes.
No. Boorman's into nepotism. He really is.
Totally.
Yep. I believe his wife has a walk-on too. And
his wife is his wife is the lady in the lake.
Oh, really?
That's Boorman's wife. Is the lady in the lake. That's her.
Really?
Yep.
Okay. I knew she was in it somewhere.
She's
your turn, Bob.
Me? Well, I didn't watch a lot of movies in the 80s. So
I wasn't born yet.
I shall give you mine in no particular order. And
just
again,
just do one. We're just doing one. No particular order of one.
Yeah, one. One is the loneliest number. I had to go with what is, in my opinion, the 80th of all 80s movies. One of my favorites, again, another English director, and it is Repo Man with Emilio Estevez. This movie just has an 80s feel to it. Between the music, the whole new wave punk rock scene, the whole sort of nouveau capitalism, government conspiracies, people operating under the radar. Just this whole thing is it's an 80s movie. And every time I see it, I pick something else out of it that I never noticed before. It's just such a fun film. I mean, any movie that has a hippie, drugged out 60s shaman and a government alien conspiracy with the Men in Black, I mean, how can you not have fun with this?
Yeah. And the music was cutting edge. Loved it.
Amazing music. I used to have the soundtrack.
Yeah, I see. Now that was it. I worked in a record store in the 80s, so I sold these soundtracks, and Repo Man was a huge seller. I'd like to say Xanadu was too, but somehow I didn't pay a lot of attention to the movement of that record as much as, I don't know, the style of music that I was interested in. So
right. I have to confess, I've never seen Repo Man. It's something I need to track down and watch.
Emilio is great. Yeah, Emilio is great in it.
He's great in it.
Harry Dean Stanton
as his mentor Bud. I'm trying to remember the guy who played Miller, the shaman. You've seen him in everything. He's just been in everything over the years.
Was it Harry Dean Stanton?
Yeah, well,
Harry Dean Stanton was the mentor.
He was the mentor.
Right, yeah.
Okay. Another film that was really highly edited on television that they actually would redo the language just for the heck of it, and it was like, oh, that doesn't go there. That's like Smokey the Bandit.
Oh, and also Miss Pettyjohn, I forget her first name, but the actress who was in the Game Masters of Triskelion.
Oh, Angelique.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Angelique Pettyjohn. She has a small part, as they call her a repo wife.
No kidding.
Yes.
All right. We are well over the halfway point in this thing, and we have only talked about one movie each. Let's go to the crowd, to the chat here, and let's see what they're saying. We've got Cindy D, who's saying 16 Candles and Pretty in Pink, loved John Hughes movies. Yeah.
Definitely.
Retro Warehouse mentions Christy McNichol. She was definitely someone that was on both in movies and TV in the 80s. Pirate movie, Only When I Laugh. Emily, channel member Emily Miller says, I'm going to be mad if nobody mentions Labyrinth. We could be in trouble. We're mentioning it now, Emily.
My wife would appreciate you. Yes, she would.
Great movie.
We mentioned it. Does that count?
There's been some conversation about Blue Lagoon. Let's see.
That was good.
Yep, pirate movies mentioned again. Little Darlings. Was that 80 or was 79? Maybe
I
it
want
was
to say
80.
late 70s. I think it was late 70s.
Let's see. My Bodyguard. That was 80, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was a great movie with Matt Dillon. Is it Chris Makepeace, I think, is the kid that
was his name. I think it was.
Yeah.
And Adam Baldwin was the bodyguard. Yeah. Good movie.
Joan Cusack.
Yeah, Joan Cusack.
Joan Cusack was in it.
Yeah. Dragon Slayer. Channel member Carlos Ceja says Dragon Slayer, another movie that Peter McNichol was the star of that movie, if I remember right. And that movie was interesting because it was a joint venture between Disney and Paramount. One of two. Do any of you guys know what the other joint venture that year was between Disney and Paramount?
Tron.
No.
It was a guess.
That's what I was going to say.
Yes, it was a guess.
Yeah. I think that was Disney alone. Popeye.
Of all time.
Oh, I would never have gotten that. Thank you.
They're still paying for that one.
Yeah.
I know, really.
I tried to watch Popeye. I actually saw it in the theater when it came out, and I tried to watch it again recently, and it's dreadfully slow. It's dreadfully slow.
Bizarre.
Yeah, it is. Altman might not have been the right director for that movie. I'm just saying. Tracy says My Bodyguard. I think there's a lot of folks that have fond memories of My Bodyguard. And Gary mentions The Never Ending Story. Retro Warehouse, talking about Labyrinth again. Yes, one of the highlights was definitely Jennifer Connelly in that movie, as well as Bowie. I mean, cool, the great movie with Bowie. You know, Die Hard, Danny Staton talks about. Buckaroo Banzai.
Yeah.
What's the guy? Peter.
Peter Weller.
Doctor Peter Weller.
Doctor. Okay. He's a professor in history.
Okay.
And he has also a RoboCop too.
He was in RoboCop.
Yes.
And 80s had a lot of good movies, man.
Oh yeah.
I mean, people are saying Fast Times, and of course, Fast Times.
I know that's on somebody's list. I know that has to be on somebody's list.
That's on a list. Yeah, that might be on a list. Time Bandits, Kroll, Willow.
Oh, yeah.
All great flicks. All great flicks. All right. Hey, how about we take a 2-minute break, watch some 80s commercials, and we'll come back and we'll talk about some more movies. Sound good?
Sounds good, dude.
Works for me.
All right. Let me see if I can find where are those commercials I've queued up. There they are.
When that sun breaks out, lift up your head and shout, it's gonna be a great day.
Kellogg's waits for you, that spirit comes shining through, promising you a great day. How could you think of starting this bright new morning without your K-double-L? Oh, it's double good with Kellogg's, you'll have a great day.
Kellogg's has been making great days for more people for more years with more cereals than anyone. Corn Flakes, Rice Krispies, Frosted Flakes, Product 19. Trust your mornings to Kellogg's.
Very best part of starting your bright new morning is Kellogg's way. It's not far away. Kellogg's will help you say there's gonna be a great, we're gonna see a great, it's gonna be a great day.
Saturday, how did Mama and Eunice get busted with the ladies of the night?
Hey, Grandma, God love you. At your age is still at it.
Mama's Family. Then on Teachers Only, who's trying to scare Diana and Sam?
Are you beaten? No. I'm going back to work.
Come on over to our place Saturday.
You got a date, skin's looking great, cause Clearseal's ace. Face to face. See you at 8, skin's looking great, CJ's the place. Face to face.
Clearasil gives you great-looking skin, even close up. Inside, it kills bacteria to dry the pimple.
Clearasil's ace, face to face.
Outside, it soaks up all the excess oil.
Feeling first rate, your skin's looking great, cause Clearasil's ace.
Clearasil, for skin that looks great, even close up.
Face to face.
John,
I feel so guilty. I never had acne problems, so I'm like, oh no, Clearasil.
You are lucky, my friend.
I was.
Channel member Gary Collins says everything from the John Hughesian universe, the Karate Kid trilogy, The Flight of the Navigator, great movie, Meatballs 2, Spaceballs, The Wedding Singer. Was Wedding Singer 80s? I think that was 90s, wasn't it?
I think it was 2000.
I think it was set in the 80s, wasn't it?
Set in the 80s.
Yeah.
Set in the 80s. Yeah. Does anybody have a DVD Blu-ray copy of Live Aid? I have a VHS of Live Aid, but no DVD Blu-ray. Let's see if any other channel member comments real quick. There probably are. Sarah mentions Flight of the Navigator as well. And you're right. Lance mentioned, channel member Lance Chaffa mentions Fast Times at Ridgemont High. So lots of good conversation. Let's go in reverse order. Bob wanted to count his down anyway. So why don't you share another one with us? We'll go reverse alphabetically this time.
Well, we're going to do reverse order. I'm going to pick my last film next. And you remember how I was saying earlier about how the 80s, one of their great dualities was they were cutting edge and yet at the same time very nostalgic? Yeah. I'm going to pick one that fits that to a T. And that is musical fever dream, action, adventure, romance, Streets of Fire, which is an absolutely outstanding flick. It just Diane Lane plays a rock and roll sex kitten who was abducted by an obsessed leader of a bicycle gang, played by William Dafoe, who he's one of the few actors I can recall who can do villain and hero with equal alacrity. But what makes this film absolutely amazing is the imagery. It looks like it was filmed in a dystopian Hopper painting. I mean, it looks like it's from like the late 40s, early 50s, but you can tell it's actually slightly in the future. Like I had this weird backstory in my head when I first saw it, that clearly it's a dystopia. There was some type of event which caused everything to collapse, and there's been some recovery, but this is the only level of technology that they can sustain. It's sort of like early 50s level. And it's caused them all to like basically out of nostalgia, wear the same clothes and into like this. It's doo-wop music, but it's postmodern doo-wop music. And it has one of the best made-up bands apart from yours, Pat, of course, present company excluded, but one of the best made-up Hollywood bands of all time, the Surreals, who brought us I Can Dream About You, but actually improved on the song by actually giving it a stage performance, which if you watch it, and you can find it on YouTube in any number of incarnations, the performance they give along the physical, the dance number that they do along with the song, to this day, I think it stands as one of the best performances in American cinema. And also the supporting cast. You have E.G. Daly as Baby Doll. You have Rick Moranis as a skeevy promoter. The whole thing just comes together. And like I said, it's an action, adventure, romance, dark comedy. And it is possibly one of the 80th of the 80s movies.
You mentioned how it looks. That's Andrew Laszlo is the director of photography on that movie, and look up his work. I mean, he's a great cinematographer, great cameraman, directed by Walter Hill. So yeah, it looks great.
Thank you. I didn't know that
about
Laszlo.
He was a DOP
Yeah,
on
really know your stuff, man. Wow.
Yeah, that's a good catch.
It's impressive, isn't it?
Yes.
The reason I love this movie is I am a huge Meatloaf fan. I love Meatloaf, and of course, Meatloaf is nothing without his songwriter Jim Steinman.
Yeah.
And Steinman wrote all those songs, not the "I Can Dream About You" song, but all the songs that Diane Lane sang with her band were all Steinman compositions. It has a fantastic soundtrack. That's a soundtrack I used to have on LP. It disappeared somewhere, but there was the Steinman songs. You had the Dan Hartman song that you're talking about, which were performed by the Sorrells on screen. And then you had bands like the Fix that were on that soundtrack as well. It was just a really great soundtrack, a really audacious movie that worked on some levels, other levels, it wasn't a success. We've talked about a lot of movies that were not a success, and this is another one of them that wasn't successful when it was released.
Right.
But you're right. The way they paired those movies up with music was a huge profit boost for that era. It was almost like just a prerequisite, and we'll have to have an album with it. And I can't tell you how many Eddie and the Cruisers albums I sold. Right. It was unbelievable. And I never even saw the movie. So it's kind of like, movie. Yeah. I bet it must be. The music was. I'm very Bruce Springsteen, but to me, it was it.
Yeah. It was John Cafferty.
It was really good stuff.
From Providence, Rhode Island, or Warwick, Rhode Island, somewhere in Rhode Island.
Yeah. All right, Pat, your turn. Why don't you give us another one?
Well, since we're on the subject of music, I guess both my last two actually have a lot of that soundtrack concept, but this album sold a lot when I was working in the store, 1981 as well, and it was the animated feature Heavy Metal. I mean, just look at the front cover. It's like, okay, we're going to promote some bands too. I think the reason behind that is that the Columbia, who was the main music outlet for that time, was in cahoots with the creators and their industry head. And it's one of those where there's these industry guys that all just came together based off what was a comic book, right? And it was a comic book called something else because it was in Canada, so it was in French. But the whole thing was, and Thrash, you probably know more about this aspect of the movie, which it was the comic book thing, but definitely on the adult side. And,
yes.
Hey, at that age too, when it first came out, I was like, "Wow, this is really good."
It was an adult comic book, actually. It was very risque. And of course, that was the 80s. You had to push the envelope whenever possible.
Well, and it just the graphic of the violence, but not gore. I mean, kind of gore, I guess. But I mean, I've seen gore, and that's not really what this was. It was more of a science fiction aspect to it, and the voice actors, which kind of surprised me. I made a list. So Roger Bumpus, you guys know that name? Roger Bumpus.
I remember John Vernon, though.
He played Hanover Fist, who was like the one that grew into Stern, and he wanted to go after Stern, but it was Squidward. Roger Bumpus was Squidward.
Oh,
and of course, then you had John Candy, who he played multiple roles in it. Not to mention a horny robot. Perfect. Eugene Levi. Thank you. I knew you guys would help me out on that. And he's had some success, but he was a voice actor on that. And Harold Ramis.
Yeah.
And then Percy Rodriguez.
As the Lochnar.
Lochnar. And what else was he in?
He was Commodore Stone in Star Trek.
I knew you were going to get it for me, Barry.
Percy also did a lot of movie trailers too. If you watch the trailer to The Black Hole, he's the narrator of the Black Hole trailer. He was what a voice.
Oh yeah,
and just when you thought it was safe to go back on the wall.
Jaws, right. He was great.
So it's neat that they were able to use this voice talent that I don't know if it had come into its own yet, but you could hear it, the Canadian influence, obviously, and then it's just it was a fun movie to watch, especially with
John
the music.
Vernon had a great voice too. He was the double secret probation guy from Animal House. He was Dean Warmer. He also was one of the voices in Heavy Metal. I was only able to see Heavy Metal on 16 millimeter film because a friend of mine had it later in the 80s, because that movie was in music rights hell for years before it ever came out on home video.
Yeah.
And I was waiting for it. And when it finally did, I snatched it up.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. And the music was perfectly placed.
Oh, so good. So good.
And so diverse. It's like you got Sabbath and Devo. It's like, all right, that'll work.
One of my favorite anecdotes is supposedly Blue Oyster Cult, when they were approached, they had it stuck in their head that they were going to do the soundtrack, like Queen did with Dune, or like
Flash Gordon.
I'm sorry, Toto did with Dune, or Queen did with Flash Gordon. So they wrote all these numbers, right? And then when they said we have enough for the soundtrack, the producer of the movie went, "Oh yeah, we wanted a song. So they ended up incorporating all that into Fire of Unknown Origin, one of their best albums in my opinion. But I always thought, I was like, if there's ever been a Hollywood moment, I think that's one of them, one of the biggest.
Yeah. Well, and Don Felder, really, I consider him doing the title track, which was Taking a Ride for Heavy Metal, which is just a great song. But really, I guess the title of it belongs more to Sammy Hagar, who ironically, in that tape we were talking about that they found of me with Montrose, he actually lets me sing two of their biggest hits. So I get to morph into Sammy Hagar. And I pulled it off too.
He's the rock star of us. I mean, this guy's the rock star over here. That's great. He's what we wanted to be.
I just can't wait to hear the remastered version, the entire thing, Pat. We've got to make that happen.
Yeah, I mean, I've got it. I was like, I got to get it out there, man. I got to get it out. People got to hear this. And then this guy's like, let me play with it for a little while. And quite frankly, with this kind of stuff, you can't put stuff where there's no stuff at. So you can polish it. But if it's a turd, you're going to have a hard time polishing it. You've heard the term, you can't polish a turd. And, and so in this way, there's some of it that's like, whoa.
Yep. Jeff Lynne could fix it for you, but he'd charge you for it, though. That's the problem.
Yeah, and my ears are shot. So if they weren't in such bad shape, I would be able to do it acceptably. But anyway, that's something to look forward to.
Great choice, Pat. Fantastic movie, fantastic album. I just love it. Love it. Let's see. Where are we going next? I guess we're going to me. This was mentioned a number of times in the chat. I'll go ahead and throw it out there. The Pirate movie. Another mess. Completely a mess of a movie, but one that I love so darn much for a number of different reasons. But I'm seeing a theme here. A lot of our 80s movies are really, the music plays a huge role in these 80s movies. And this one, certainly it's the case. It's the guys from Heaven 17 that were actually in charge of updating the Gilbert and Sullivan opera, and the new songs in there it's kind of funny because it's an awkward juxtaposition of some Gilbert and Sullivan songs, and then you've got these modern pop confections of the 80s that they're just, any song called Pumpin' and Blowin' is just, you gotta love it. This is,
and she doesn't sing it. She does it in spoken word, but somehow it works. I don't know. That's a song that everybody remembers from Pirate Movie.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a movie that I actually didn't see in the 80s. I didn't see it at the theater. I was too cool to see it at the theater, but it was one of my wife's favorite films from that era, and she introduced me to it, and I probably watch it once a year just for fun. It's one of those again movies that you just fire up and you listen to the soundtrack while you do whatever else you're doing, and certainly enjoy it. I'm a big Christy McNichol fan. I think she does her very best in a movie that struggles at times, but she certainly gives it her very best. And there's the rest of the cast is pretty good as well. They're just stuck in a movie that I believe came out the same year as actually the Pirates of Penzance with Linda Ronstadt and Rex Smith. Was it Rex Smith was in that with her?
Yeah.
Pat said he never saw Eddie and the Cruisers. I'll have to add the Pirate. I've never seen that movie.
It's free to watch on YouTube, Barry. Free to watch on YouTube.
I'll check it out.
Have to check it out. It's one of the first movies that I remember with just such an obvious product placement. Baskin Robbins. She buys a Baskin Robbins ice cream when there's no real reason for her to do so. It's just there to sell. And I think they had some sort of special pirate movie flavor when it first came out.
So Christy sings in it, right?
Yeah.
Well, spoken word.
Well, she actually does. She does sing.
You're right. She does.
She does sing in The Night the Lights Went Out in Georgia with Dennis Quaid. In that one, she does sing in that one. So I was wondering if she sang in that.
Yeah, she does. There's other songs she sings with Chris Atkins.
Okay.
And it's funny. They do a thing that was actually really, really popular in the 80s, particularly in the early 80s, where there's just a zillion references to like other movies or TV shows.
Star Wars.
Say that's one of them, or the Pink Panther,
yes,
or any number of there's in Puffing and a Blowing. There's a clam that bites his feet and somehow turns into the symbol for the Rolling Stones.
Right.
It's like while you're watching it, it's like a fever dream. You're just trying to pick out all these like pop culture references, which was like again really really popular at that time. It was just a shtick. Where it's like, let's see how many references we can give the audience and see how many they actually catch in the days before Easter eggs. And it makes it fun. It makes it feel like you're watching a game show or something.
Yeah.
Check it out.
Yeah, all right, Barry, there was a recent movie called Player One, I think, that did that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my goodness.
Made the whole movie about those kind of plugs.
That was just IP. There was just so many different pieces of IP in that movie. I like that movie. It's a fun movie.
It's a great movie.
I had to watch Player One twice because the first time I was so distracted by pointing out what was in it, I couldn't pay attention.
Where's the plot?
I had to watch it again. It's even got the Kroll, the glaive from Kroll in it. I mean, it's got the whole kitchen sink in there. Yeah,
Stretch Armstrong and a Hot Wheel. I don't care what the story's about.
The charm of making from Excalibur is in it.
And the 60s Batmobile was in it. How can you not love a movie? Yeah. Your turn, Barry.
Well, I like I say, I remember two of my movies. I'm going to say one that I think you may have an image for. They mentioned it earlier. How about Fast Times at Ridgemont High? I mean, I did throw that one in. I knew we were going to come up with it. I heard people mention it. I'm like, it's coming up. I put it in there. I think every group of people, group of society or whatever, they have their movies. I mean, my parents loved American Graffiti because that was the time they grew up. I have some old the generation not far after that loves the one with Kevin Kline where they go to
Big Chill.
Which one?
Big Chill.
Big Chill, yeah, the Big Chill. That generation. That's that generation's movie. That was before me too. And then then you have Dazed and Confused, which is a great movie, which is for the 70s kids. And I remember that time, but I was a young kid. But I do love Dazed and Confused. Well, the 80s, you've got Fast Times at Ridgemont High. That's the one that I guess most of us identify most with because that and maybe The Breakfast Club too. But Fast Times was about all that stuff they were doing. And that's the movie that Animal House, for the older generation too. But I call Fast Times at Ridgemont High our Animal House because it was the crazy stuff that we did in the 80s. I mean, think about Judd Reinhold in the room looking at Phoebe Cates coming out of the pool, and she walks in on him. I mean, that's who hasn't been there,
Right.
Wait, what? I mean, come on.
I never cared if they knocked.
Okay. All right.
As a matter of fact, I think the door jarred a little bit.
Don't even answer the door. Lock it.
Exhibitionism.
But Ray Walston is Mr. Hand. You've got Mr. Spinoli. The pizza, the bring enough pizza for everybody. It's just talk about an 80s movie, and you've got Phoebe Cates and Jennifer Jason Leigh, and it's just it doesn't seem like they're acting. It just seems like it's a bunch of kids in the 80s and someone turned the camera on and just filmed them. And that's
Kelly Marino was one of the cheerleaders too. Sam, the blonde from Night of the Comet, she's in Fast Times 2 as one of the cheerleaders.
Isn't that Kelly Mahoney? Kelly Maroney, is that her name?
Maroney. I always say Marino. Kelly Maroney.
Okay, yeah, that's her. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah,
I always get the name wrong. Yeah. And by the way, the pizza delivery guy is Taylor Negron,
right?
Who was in everything in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah,
80s. It's got 80s all over it. It's just
it's
dripping 80s.
I think it was one of Nick Cage's first movies, possibly his first one. It was he's billed as Nicholas Coppola.
Really?
Coppola.
Okay.
Yeah. And who else? So the guy that played Mask.
Eric Stoltz.
Eric Stoltz was in it. He was one of the stoner dudes.
Yep.
Yes. Oh, and Nancy Wilson from Heart is the really hot blonde
sister. Yeah.
Yeah. And
what?
Sister. Yeah, she's the really hot blonde in the convertible who laughs at Judge Reinhold for wearing the pirate costume.
So Cameron Crowe wrote the novel, right? That the movie's based on, and of course later on he married Nancy Wilson.
Coincidence? I think not.
No.
Stranger things have happened, but not much.
Yeah,
we're doing 6 degrees of Fast Times,
Right. We probably could. No one's mentioned. I think it's Forrest Whitaker that's the big football
player.
It is.
Yeah, football hero. Yes, very good.
Yeah.
Just having some pizza and learning about Cuba. Yeah.
Great movie. Okay, we are well over the hour mark. How about we do this? I'd love you all to talk about what you're doing on YouTube right now. If you remember your third choice and want to just mention it, feel free to do so. I know what it was, Barry. Do you want me to tell you what your third choice was?
Yeah, what was it? Because I cannot remember what I sent.
I'm pretty certain it was. Wasn't weren't you the guy that said
Games? Yeah, John. I interviewed John Badham, who directed War Games. He's a great director, and it was talk about computers and threat of nuclear war. That's 80s too. That was prevalent in the 80s, and it was a good movie too. I loved War Games.
Yeah, sure was. Why don't you go ahead and tell us what's going on in your world in terms of other things outside of Retropaloozas?
Well, what's weird is I know that Los Angeles is got a problem going on right now, and then we got put into a deep freeze. Paralyzed the South here in Atlanta, so we've got 2 different degrees of weird stuff going on each coast right now, and but you can still get away from it and listen to a little bit of fun on Saturday. I try to give some escape to some people from the bad news of that happens to be going on in our world. Speaking on the air, I'm live on the radio 10 a.m. till noon Eastern on WBHF radio out of Northwest Georgia, just northwest of Atlanta, Georgia. You can stream us on our website at WBHFradio.org, or you can download our beautiful app that we have for iPhone and that other phone system. I can't really remember what that other one's called, but yeah, iPhone. You can get it for iPhone and the other one. And talk about, what these guys talk about. I talk about the same thing. They do it on YouTube a lot more, but I do it just on the radio. And I like born in the 60s, grew up in the 70s, and I graduated high school in the early 80s. That's my generation. And you heard a lot of the 80s talk right here tonight. We were talking about it, and I was remembering all of that. So I've got a YouTube channel. Look me up. I'm on bkontheair@gmail.com. You can email me as well. So check it out. I'd appreciate it. And give me a call live sometimes. You can call me on there. I'll take your call.
It's always fun to call Barry. That's for sure. Pat, how about you? What's going on? Did you say you're starting back up the interviews real soon here?
I did. As a matter of fact, I'm hoping, and it's looking pretty good. Of course, I don't want to say that I'll have her or not, but I'm going for Stephanie Powers. and we'll see if that happens. But just last week, I interviewed a gentleman named Joel Brokaw, and he is a best-selling author on New York's best-selling list. But he did a biography on his dad. Well, here's the title: Driving Marilyn, which his dad actually used to do. The Life and Times of Legendary Hollywood Agent Norman Brokaw. Norman Brokaw helped build the William Morris Agency.
Wow.
Started in the mailroom. Little nepotism, but that's downplayed. He handled everywhere and everything having to do with Hollywood. As his son said, there isn't anything in Hollywood that doesn't have my dad's fingerprints on it. And here's the kicker. He did it as a nice guy. So I say in the intro, think of Harvey Weinstein. Now, go polar opposite, and you have you have his dad, Norman. And I'm telling you, that book uplifted me to the stratosphere. And at the end of it, I was crying because it was just that good. How, in fact, nice guys can finish first.
Love it.
And the golden rule, and it works. Now, I don't know if it works anymore, but back then with the classic stars, boy, oh boy, was this guy loved. And the stories that are in it are incredible, and the way Joel wrote it is even more incredible. So that interview will drop this week, and I'll have it out on YouTube and on my Retro TV Radio podcast. So I'll have it in both forms, and I'll shout it out when it's done.
Awesome. It's that channel of yours is just a treasure trove of amazing stuff, folks. If you haven't subscribed to it, you need to do so. The interviews are great. The videos that you have there in archive format are wonderful as well. And you remember your third choice, right, Pat?
Well, I do, because it's my hometown favorite. No, that's the problem with Santa Cruz, or in this case, Santa Clarita.
That's right.
All the damn vampires.
Yeah, too many vampires. How do you handle it?
You simply, you get yourself a motorcycle, one that can handle it out on the beach. Yeah, and you confuse them by stealing one of their girlfriends.
You call Bernard Hughes to help you out.
And there we were, man. We watched that whole thing being filmed right in front of us. Yeah, and we were even.
How could I not know this? You watched them filming Lost Boys? Well,
we were in it theoretically during the concert scene. The concert scene where the guys playing the sax and
with the bodybuilders playing the sax.
Doing
what the movie needs.
That song was a Santa Cruz band called The Call that did that song. So he was lip syncing to that, and they pan around the audience, and the rumor is yours truly has a millisecond in there.
That is awesome. That is. I can't believe I've ever heard the story. That is awesome. That is amazing.
We didn't expect it to be what it was, and it took a long time to go from the shooting to actually hitting the theaters. It seemed like years. And when we went and saw it, the whole place was like thrilled that it was our hometown. But then the fact was, it's like, hey, this is really freaking good.
Yeah.
Who would have thought it would actually become an absolute classic?
That's a great movie.
And it is.
Did you know it wasn't until that movie came out, that's when I learned that Jason Patrick, is that his name?
Yeah.
That's when that movie came out. That's when I learned, for some reason, he was Jackie Gleason's grandson, and I didn't know it when that movie came out. Yeah.
Yep. And the helicopters that they used to film all the night scenes flew right over my house every night, so I could tell when they were on their way to film and when they were headed back to the only airport that we have. So that was cool too. Neat memory. But met Schumacher right here. Walked right up to me.
Oh, wow.
Will you be in my movie?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I don't think so. It's like, but please. But a lot of locals got in it. Amazing. A lot of locals were cast in
great.
it. Yeah. So that's it.
Very cool. Very cool. Bob, your turn. Tell us about your channel.
Well, right now I'm still doing my Sundays, although every other Sunday I'm alternating. This coming Sunday, I have this thing now where My Flock is Everywhere. Sister Sarah and Danny also joined me, and we have a theme of one kind or another. This coming Sunday, it's going to be a consortium effort as opposed to my solo effort last Sunday. This week, I got some new content coming out. I got a Wretched recap planned, another one of my infamous top 10 worst dad jokes in captivity, an unboxing, and maybe another surprise for you. I have a little extra time now as the restaurant to which I've been working in is closed for the season. So I have my nights free for a while. And oh boy, you guys going to pay the price. Also, a little, and other than joining you fine gentlemen as well, by the way, I'm still doing Tug's channel on Sunday mornings, where we talk about everything fun, sci-fi, film related. We've been doing a series on films so terrible they actually are good. Well, at least to us. And for those of you familiar with Kevin Lambert of the Entertainment Headquarters, the end of this month, I'm going to be joining him and some other kaiju aficionados. And we're going to be talking about the BBC mega cult kaiju classic, The Giant Behemoth.
Wow.
So I'm going to be very busy for the rest of the month.
You are really turning into a presence in terms of live streams, that type of thing. It's fun to see on different channels, that type of thing, Bob.
I saw it coming.
Yeah.
I saw it coming.
We knew him way back then. And your final movie was?
I have to go with Return of the Living Dead. Part of that 80s zombie renaissance. I have to go with a zombie movie. And again, one with an absolutely outstanding, amazing soundtrack.
Yes.
The soundtrack of this is out of this world. And you have one of the heroes is a former German, Ernst Kaltenbrunner. I don't know if it's that Ernst Kaltenbrunner, but he very clearly fought on the other side during World War II. And he's the hero, but somehow this whole thing really, really comes together. So if you haven't seen it, check it out. It is so much fun. It's also the first movie that gives us the running zombie. Oh, yes. And also the first incarnation where they go brains, where they're specifically targeting the brains. And somehow it all just comes together.
I'm glad you used the F word with this movie. It is fun. It is really a fun horror movie. And highly recommended if you're into that kind of film.
You had me worried for a second. I thought I forgot myself and said a different F word.
You guys are always really good about keeping it PG. Thank you, fellas.
But other channels I don't have to, so sometimes I forget now. I'm like, oops.
No,
that F word ahead of it.
Go hog wild on some of those other streams, Bob.
Dave will dock you, just so you know.
Negative points. Sorry, you get a demerit.
I got a bill last month, as a matter of fact.
It was fun.
Hey, fellers, thank you so much for joining me tonight. It's been awesome. Always a treat. And, of course, to the community, I truly appreciate everybody that hung out with us tonight. Let me go ahead and, let's end it here. Thanks, everybody, and we'll talk to you all very, very soon. Folks, visit these guys' channels, support them, make sure they feel your love. All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Hang out. Hang out.
So thank you very much for your support. Click on that thumbnail cause it's time to go. Dave's got the classics, let the memories flow. TV shows and movies that we all hold so dear. On his YouTube channel he's keeping memories near. Dave Sundstrom, bringing back the good stuff, oh yeah.